Hello, my name is Francesco, and I'm one of the instructors here at Comtech, and I'm going to walk us through one of the courses that we offer called IT Auditing Intermediate. Now, it's going to be a short presentation, but this course covers the following different topics: Windows auditing policy, group policy configuration, file integrity monitoring, logging standard, logging best practices, the log management process, vulnerability scanning, and analysis. Now, for this short presentation, I'm going to focus on logging standards and go through a PowerPoint, followed by the lab associated with this lecture. So in this lesson, we'll cover the following topics. Once again, we're not going to get through all of them, but we'll look at event logs, right? What we need to be logging or what would commonly be logged. We'll look at Windows versus Unix logging, right, and evaluate that. We'll also consider firewall logs, another place we might find logs in our organization, right? Intrusion detection devices, and we'll look at the importance of application logs and the syslog forwarding process. All right, so what is an event log or a log, right? A log is just data stored by your computer system. Right, log is going to contain information that has occurred on that system. That way, you as a defender or analyst, right, can go back and see exactly what occurred on that system. Right. Another definition for us here is just an event. An event is just something that occurs on a system. Right. It's not necessarily malicious in nature. It could just be a simple act of logging into a system, right, or computer. Or it could be some malicious event as well, right? So like a malicious binary executing on your system, right? These are all considered events in the event of the second option, right? Some malicious action occurring. You would consider that also an incident, but kind of beyond the scope of this course here. And so an event log is the log file where that event occurred, right? Log file is storing that event. Right, contains information about the event that occurred, right? So things like the operating system or the application that triggered that event, right? And so here you can see in his example of, in this case, it's actually going to be a Windows event logging, where you can see each line represents an event that occurred on the system. You can select that and then view more information about that event, right? More detailed information. In this case, you just have a pane on the bottom. We can absolutely double click on that and give you like another window to show. All right, so talk about Windows logging first. Windows logs, there are three main types of logs in Windows, right? System logs, application logs, and security logs. System logs has to deal with anytime the OS creates an event, right? You'll see that information here in a system log. Application log is for different applications executing on your system, right? If there's any errors associated with that, right, you can find those in the application logs. And then security logs will have any kind of policies that are executed, right? That information will be stored in a security log. So for example, once again, logging in is an example where you find that information in the security log, right? You can see things like IP address, if it's like a remote connection. And actually, honestly, that would be here in the remote access logs, right? But you have like user login information there in security logs. Speaking about remote access, think about these as like RDP or any kind of remote connection that you might have to your system. That information will be stored in the remote access logs. Command execution of living off the land. So when we talk about living off the land, LODL, sometimes you see abbreviation for that or an acronym for that. Essentially, it's where an attacker gains access to your system, and then they use applications or tools that are native to that device, right? So PowerShell is a very common and very powerful tool installed by default on all Windows systems. Of course, you can go in there and unset that, right, for like enterprise environments. But attackers will actually use PowerShell and further compromise your system or establish persistence or whatever it needs to use, right? You can use PowerShell with a lot of different commandlets in there. And so in that specific case, right, you might actually have to go into PowerShell history logs and see what commands were ran to figure out what the attacker did, right? Right. Log retention. Log retention is just essentially saying that we're going to retain these logs for some period of time. That period of time might be established by like different compliance regulations, right? So it might be like 90 days or 6 months. And so we can use a SIM to do things like meet those compliance retention requirements. SIMs also are great for doing correlation and aggregation of a log. So if you have, think about like a network environment, right? You have logs coming from maybe firewalls, right? You have maybe networking intrusion detection devices that are generating logs. You have maybe user devices that are also generating logs. And so SIM can actually take the logs from all these different locations, right? Aggregate them in some central location. And then you can kind of see what's occurred on your network by using like the SIM dashboard, right? Another consideration is that logs, in general, are stored in the same location, right? Especially look at like Linux systems. You can kind of go into if you're an attacker, right? You know that, hey, logs are going to be stored here at this location. I can go in there and delete those logs or clean them if you're like Unix, or clear them in Windows, right? Windows logs are binary. So it's much more difficult to go in there and clean them up. But separate folders, right? We might want to move our logs to non-default locations, right? So somewhere else in system. So if the attacker does get access to your system, maybe they won't be able to find your logs, at least right from the start. So that's what it's talking about here with separate folders. And that kind of also plays into moving those logs to a different device outside of the device that created the logs, right? So like a centralized server. And once again, that's going to make it much more difficult for the attacker to modify or compromise those logs. So, all right, I'm going to walk you through one of the labs that we offer here. And so this lab is going to be part of the lecture that we just kind of went through, where we're going to set up syslog forwarding from a Windows system, figure about the objectives for this lab, and then a brief scenario. All right, first part is just scanning with Nmap. I'm going to skip this part for now and move to the second part. It's just because we're on a time crunch here. Identify access to the Splunk server object. All right, so the scenario, we know the Splunk server is running on this IP address, and so we're going to identify what objects are being accessed on the server. The first thing we do is log into the Windows 10 box using these credentials. We'll go down here, select a Windows 10, and we're going to use the credentials admin with password. All right, we're going to launch command prompt, so CMD. And then we're going to go ahead and open up the security policy. All right, inside here, we're going to enable auditing by going to local policies and audit policies. So local policies, audit policy. And then we're going to select audit object access right here. Right, so notice here it says we have not enabled auditing for audit objects. So we're going to go ahead and modify that, double click it, and we are going to enable for both success and failure. So we're going to select success, failure, and OK. So now anytime that audit object access, either successful or failure, right, has occurred, we will log it. All right. Right, we'll go open up a file explorer, and we're going to go to this location here. Looks like Splunk's executable. So program files, Splunk, binary files, and then Splunk right here. All right, right click on it and go to the properties. and go to the security tab. All right, go to advanced right there. And auditing, continue. All right, we're going to go ahead and add an entry here. The proposal is going to be for everyone. Right, and right here, everyone. All right. The type is going to be for success and failure, and we're going to select full control. All right, so everyone is going to have full control access. Splunk. Okay, close that out. Okay. And then we're just going to reboot the system. So all right, so rebooting tells us right here, right? It's going to take the policy that we just modified and apply that to the system, right? Then we're going to go ahead and verify auditing has occurred and follow these instructions. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough time to go through the rest of the lab, but essentially it's going to test that the actions we took, modifying the security policy, and then test it to make sure it is in fact auditing and logging whenever we launch Splunk. Anybody launches Splunk. So, all right. Well, thank you.